Got it.
All right, got it. Now we have to do that. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our April Spring into the Garden Talk. So excited to actually be with people today and have our Zoom audience. So this is our first program where we've actually had people come to it live and still holding them on Zoom so we can record them. The folks on Zoom, if you can stay on mute, that would be great. We'll have a question period at the end. So today is our speaker, Suzanne Ball. Suzanne's been a master gardener since 2018. So I know she loves to garden and it's like one of her passions. So today we're gonna have her talk about what to do with spring just around the corner, or maybe it's finally here, who knows?
All right, we're ready to spring into the garden, but hold on a minute because there are a few things that we need to take into consideration. If we get into the garden too soon and the soil is soft or wet, we're going to compact the soil, and that's not going to be a good thing. So a good way of testing is if you take a handful of soil and squeeze it lightly. If it stays compacted, then you know that it's not time to go into the garden. If it's loose and falls, then you know it's ready to go into the garden. So that's the first reason. The second reason is a lot of beneficials a lot of insects and beneficials live in the soil and in the leaves. They lay their eggs on the soil, and oh gosh. Most bumblebee queens nest just below the ground or underneath the leaves until spring. Luna moths, like they make their cocoons and they hang from the tree branches, but sometimes they fall in the leaves and they look just like a crumpled up leaf. And I think that's a really awesome picture that Jan found. And the next thing is cutting back your stems too soon. This is another reason that a lot of insects burrow into the hollow stems, and they stay there for the winter. And so you don't want to cut them down too soon because then you're taking their home from them. You can do damage. But there is another option if you do have to cut them down, is to pile them loosely, like around the trees, along you have a line of trees. Is what I have done this year because we were doing work on our compost bins. We spread them loosely along the tree lines so that they can still emerge. So other things that lay down, that nest down in leaf litter are like ladybugs, butterflies, moths, so you want to protect them as much as you can. The next thing is, before you go into the garden, that you can bide your time with, is checking your tools, making sure that they're clean and in good condition. Is everything working? And wouldn't hurt to wash and sterilize them before. I like to rinse mine off with water, spray them with a bleach solution, then rinse them again. And then I dry them really well and use 3-in-1 oil. I take a mixture of 3-in-1 oil and sand and put it in a bucket. I make a fresh one every year. And then I stick my tools that I use all the time in the bucket. So it's keeping them dry and lubricated all the time. On the other thing is checking for the rusty tools. So I soak them in white vinegar. If things are more rusty than they should be, I'll soak them in white vinegar overnight. And then the next day you'll see in the bucket that you can see a lot of the rust is falling off. So then I use a grainy or wire brush, whatever you want to use, something sturdy, and then I brush off the rust from them. And then I lube them up and all that other good stuff. And then I'm ready for, oh, and I sharpen them too, if they need to be sharpened. I use a sharpening file that's about 8 to 12 inches long. And then when you're sharpening the tools, it's important to go only in one direction. And when you're looking at your nippers, whatever you're sharpening, you'll see one part is does the cutting. And so that's the part that you want to sharpen. And then I just do a downward strokes so that, and I keep sharpening. Another thing I've done is I've taken a Sharpie and put it along the edge so that you know how much you've taken off. So you know if you missed a spot, then I just go back and, so that's one thing that I've done. All right, so then I like to inspect other tools. So the irrigation system, checking for leaks, check the hoses, those sprayers that seem to go bad all the time, checking the washers in the hose, new washers in the hoses, so that you don't have the leaks. Check all your fences, see if there's any loose boards, any warping, and fix that. I know over this past winter, we had some damage from the winds, blew down one of the only fences that we have. Then I check my garden shed and I tidy that up, and the garage, the porches always need to be cleaned. That grime gets on them. So I get all that stuff done. And then I check my garden supplies to see if I ran out of fertilizer, do I need to get more? My gloves, I don't know about you guys, but I go through gloves like crazy. The fingers seem to wear out. So I check them, and I take them and throw them in the washing machine. And they turn out pretty good. Also this year, a bunch of my garden statues need to be repainted. Some things that the paint just needs to be brushed up on them. Things are broken, need to be fixed. And then the bird feeders and bird houses need to be cleaned out. The bird houses really should be done in the fall. But I clean the feeders out with a bleached and water solution, usually 10% to 90% solution is what I use. Next thing I check is my raised beds. I check to make sure sometimes the boards are bulging from the soil getting compacted down. So I'll loosen up the soil and add any amendments that I want to add at that time. And that's when and add any more soil that needs to be added to them. And that time is when I'm like, depending on what time of year when it is in this season. That's when I start my cold weather crops in that. Next thing is, what did I do?
You went backwards.
Oh, sorry about that. Getting your soil tested. What your pH is, know what your pH is for what you're planting in your garden. That's especially important if you're vegetable gardening. You can have your soil tested by any master gardener, or bring it to we can bring it to the office and we can test it for you. And also want to make sure that soil is tested on your fruit trees as well, and your plants. Also, you can have the lab samples sent out if you want to find out what the nutritional level is in your garden as well.
Now, we can only test pH here in the office, so if you do
Right.
need a full nutrient test, we can help you figure that out and where to send it. But right now, yeah, all we can do in the office is test your pH, which is a good starting point if you aren't sure what your pH is.
Next thing, if you've ever dreamt of starting a compost pile and you haven't done it yet, spring is the best time to do that because you're picking up all those twigs and branches, and that's how I started mine with bare soil. I put the twigs down first, and then the leaf garbage, and then your food scraps. I have a can in my kitchen with a little foot press lift on it, and I put my banana peels and my coffee grounds and apple peels, whatever, but never put anything in there that's got any dressing or anything on it. It has to be fresh vegetables, peels and stuff. And select, of course, a sunny location away from your house preferred, because sometimes varmints are attracted to it. Then one of the other things you can do before getting into your garden is plan your vegetable garden out. I make a little plot of what I'm going to plant, a little map, because the first year I gardened, I got overzealous. I'm like, oh, it looks like there's more room for a couple more tomato plants here and there. Then the next thing you know, everything's grown 6 feet tall. You can't walk through them. I had pest problems. So planning out your garden is a map of how far you're going to space things is a great idea. This I like this paper because every one of those boxes I use as 1 foot. So then I plan how far I'm going to plant my tomatoes and cucumbers or whatever it is that I'm going to plant. And so that's really helped me out. And then I also do a lot of companion planting as well.
Here, I'll pass those out to Suzanne so you don't get too far off that mic. So Suzanne brought in a couple of her previous plans just so you can look at them. It's a great way to figure out your garden too.
And then I always check for companion planting because some things grow better next to other things. So you want to do your homework on that as well. And then, of course, the soil being tested. And I had any amendments. If I didn't do it in the fall, then 2 weeks before planting, I'll make sure that I put manure or whatever I'm going to amend my soil with. And of course, if you're using manure, you have to make sure that it's aged for at least a year. To till or not to till? That is the question. So when I first started gardening, I had my garden tilled up. And of course, you get more weeds. Those lovely, lovely weeds that are the bane of my existence. So over the years, I've learned different tricks. So I continued to till for quite a while, but I put down layered newspapers between the rows, and I put straw on top of them. Find a straw that's not seeded, hopefully. And I just wet down the newspapers after I put them down, and then I put the straw on top of them. They worked pretty good. But recently, last year, I started doing the cardboard between the rows, and it doesn't look pretty, but it worked wonders. If I spent 10, 20 minutes a week in the garden, and I have a good sized garden, then that was a lot, and it just saved so much time. So I really enjoyed that. And generally, so not tilling, I'm trying to not till this year.
Cardboard job.
Yeah, so this year I'm trying not to till. So I'm just gonna use hand tools to work the soil and try it that way. So this picture here shows where somebody has a permanent beds and with walkways, and they put compost down between the rows, and that looks pretty awesome. Then I tend to plant my cold weather vegetables, and I do them in my raised beds. I don't do all these things, but I have a nice bed of spinach and lettuce and escarole and Swiss chard, and I don't tend to plant my onions early, but you can. So I plant those usually in April, but again, it's whenever the soil can be worked in.
You don't put the onions in early because of wet.
I don't know.
Probably.
I think because I put them in my big garden, so I wait until I do the garden, and then that's one of the first things that I put in, but they always turn out beautifully. So, and lettuces and escarole and spinach, I put in a shadier area. And I did that last year, and I had all season long, I kept on weed planting, and I had beautiful results that way. So I was very happy with that. And this is a picture of my ugly garden last year with the cardboard between the rows. But then I also do use some food for thought is that there are a lot of flowers and herbs that repel pests. And I took advantage of that last year. And I had nasturtiums planted around the outside of the garden and sunflowers, of course, but nasturtiums attract the aphids away from your crops. Cabbage moths and aphids. So that's a wonderful thing without having, I try not to use any chemicals. And rosemary repels carrot fleas and bean beetles. Basil repels flies, moths, mosquitoes. You can take basil and rub it on your skin when you're going into your garden to work, and it will repel the mosquitoes away from you.
And you smell like pesto.
And you smell really good.
Put a little oil on before you do that.
Yeah. And then basil improves the flavor of tomatoes. I'm sure it has other uses, but that's what I planted with my tomatoes. Bay leaves repel flies, cockroaches, and ants. And you want to attract beneficial insects to your garden, and marigolds is one that has many purposes too. It attracts the beneficial insects like ladybugs, parasitic wasps, and hoverflies that all prey on garden pests. Marigolds also repel aphids and rabbits. And sunflowers. The bees really love the sunflowers, and they are attracted. And you have to make sure that you use the varieties with the pollen. Okay. Spring cleanup. So when it's safe to go in the garden, you start by raking up the leaves to compost, or piles spread loosely in the landscape. Trim your perennials back. Again, you want to make sure you go 8 to 12 inches. And then you get to walk around. I like to walk around and look at what's sprouting up through the soil. spring is one of my favorite times because it's, to me, it's like a rebirth of all your plants and you get to see all your babies coming back to life. So then you look to see if there's any surprises, things sometimes transplant themselves into other places and then as I'm going along, I weed. Thankfully, at this time in my gardens, I only have a few sporadic weeds, but it's good to get a start on them so that, to get them under control. And this is also a good time to divide and move your perennials, move shrubs and plants and your bare root trees. And get ready to plant get thinking about what you're gonna do in your annual displays. Pruning. Is it time to prune? And why should you prune? Pruning helps to promote growth and flowering. It helps to remove the dead and dying branches, deters pest and animal infestations. And of course, it looks much better too. But spring blooming versus fall blooming. A good rule of thumb is spring blooming, you prune after the blooms are spent. Fall blooming, you prune in the spring. Fruit trees, you prune during dormant season. So late winter or early spring is the best time to prune them. Roses, you prune in the spring. Hydrangeas, it depends on the type of hydrangea. It's best, you need to know what your species is or your variety and call the master gardener office and we'll advise you on which ones need to be trimmed and when. Time to plant. If you want to plant berries, springtime is a good time to start doing that. Strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries. They all prefer sun. Strawberries like full sun. There's June bearing and everbearing. I have a mix of both. And one thing that I've learned is they have different colored flowers. Spring, some of them have white flowers and some of them have pink flowers. And one year I tore a bunch out because I thought that they were that weed and they were not. Strawberries like moist, well-drained soil. I put pine straw around the base when they start to bloom. I fertilize them in the spring and fall with berry tone, but there are other products that you can use. Just make sure that you follow the directions on them. Generally, the outer-bearing fruits will fruit after the first year. And then there's the outer-bearing ones that you can plant that will plant sporadically. They will bloom. They will give you fruit several times a year. And blueberries, plant in early spring. They like well-drained soil. And plant in mid-April, usually after the danger of frost is passed. You can plant in the fall, but late September, early October is really the latest when you should do that. They do like full sun to part sun, and they like acidic soil. So you can add some sulfur to your soil, coffee grounds, pine needles. They all increase the acidity. And of course, they like to be watered well. And they do self-pollinate, but it's better if you plant twos, and at least two of them. And then raspberries, they are summer fruiting and everbearing there are. And early spring is one of the best times after the ground is thawed and can be worked. and they are self-fertile. But of course, you're gonna get more fruit if you plant them in multiples. I prune mine back in the fall. I plant mine, prune mine back really good in the fall. And I keep them staked and tied up and find that it keeps them under control. They're not all over, they're not hanging all over the place. And I have them spread quite a ways. I think they're 6 feet apart. And I'm able to walk up and down the rows and pick the berries without getting attacked by the thorns. And I also like to add compost or H manure every year. And it does help to keep the moisture and the weeds down. And keeping it well. I do it in the spring, yes. Yep. And then time to plant. Can I plant my annuals now? Well, annuals I think are, Mother's Day is always a good rule. May, because you don't want, if you put them out too early and you get a frost, they're gonna be dead. If you want to, you've got your plots, if you know what your color scheme is gonna be and what kind of flowers you wanna use, it's a good time to think about that before May. If you want to get a head start, then make sure you put your plants inside so that they don't get hurt. They don't get harmed if it does frost. So my rule for doing pots, I don't know where I learned this, but you put in the center of the pot, you want something taller that I call a thriller. And then around the base, around those, I put what I call the fillers. So flowers that.
The filler, you said filler twice.
Oh, the
Filler, I think.
So the
Oh,
thriller
sorry.
is the middle, then the filler is around the center one, and then I do spillers, which is anything that hangs down, that gives interest. So that's what my rule is, and those sweet potato vines, I absolutely love, and they come in so many different colors now. They're just amazing. So I wait until about Mother's Day or after to put them out. In the meantime, plan your color combinations and figure out what you want to use. And then think about where you want to put them in your garden. Where are you going to need a little splash of color in your flower beds. Mulching. To mulch or not to mulch? So there are pros and cons in mulching, and you don't want to do it too soon. I wait until my plants are kind of established, when everything is popped up, and you don't want to put them in too soon because it's going to smother. So the pros are mulch helps to maintain moisture. It's aesthetically pleasing, it looks nice. Reduces soil erosion, suppresses the weeds. Organic mulches provide good nutrients and encourage the organisms in worm activity. The cons are that they can create hiding places for harmful insects. If applied too thick, it can suffocate the plants and starve them with light and water. After your annuals are planted and you're enjoying the splendors of spring, that's when I feel like that's a safe time to mulch if you choose to. And there are many different types of mulch, and each of them has their pros and cons. So you might want to do your homework before you decide to mulch. And proper mulching is 2 to 4 inches is what you want to top off with. You want to be careful not to prevent, like this picture of the tree is called a mulch volcano. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's piling too too much mulch way too high against the tree trunk. And it comes in contact, this one comes in contact with the trunk, and that creates an unhealthy moist environment that can lead to cracks in the bark, insects and fungal growth. Exploit these cracks to invade the tree. Rodents also like to find these conditions ideal for chewing the bark and damaging the tree. So you don't want to create this volcano. It's not good. Oh, sunflowers. I love sunflowers. They're just so cheery and bright and happy. So I plant them all around my garden. And not only are they beautiful and edible, they attract a lot of beneficials and attract pests and birds and bees. It helps to improve your harvest because it's drawing the bees to your garden and the beneficials. Also something I learned is that it helps to detox the soil. So of heavy metals, chemicals, lead, arsenic, zinc, and chromium. Of course, you're not going to be wanting to plant a vegetable garden if you have any of these problems, but sites that have been affected by heavy metals and stuff, they plant tons and tons of sunflowers, and it sucks up all of those bad harmful things from the soil. Another rule is make sure that you buy organic, non-GMO without the chemicals, because you don't want to eat that, and you don't want that in your soil, and and you don't want to contribute to the decline of bees either. So I think those are all good reasons to plant your sunflowers.
All right, I'm gonna unmute here. Oh, okay, so thanks, Suzanne. So we'll just run through the upcoming programs, and then if anybody on Zoom wants to unmute or put your question in the chat box, we'll give some question and answer period. So our upcoming garden talks, we are hoping to continue with the in-person and Zoom. If you do want to come in person, we do ask you register now. And why won't it move forward for me? Okay, I'll be doing a Earth Day program April 21st, using native plants in the garden. This is more for folks who are interested in learning about why to use native plants and the purpose of them. And I will have some suggestions, but I'm not just going to do a list of native plants to use. Our spring gala is coming up May 14th. Yay. Yay. And always, you know, the Master Gardener office is open Monday through Friday, 10 to noon. Many ways to get a hold of them to ask questions. You can come in person, you can email them, you can call them, but we are here live and in person. And my computer, there we go. And we will be recording this. We are recording this, and we'll put it up on our YouTube page. You can also find us on Facebook. And that's the end of the program. So let me mute. I think there was one question. Suzanne, I'm gonna stop sharing. Does anybody have a question here that's live? And then we can see I know there was a lot of good tips from Suzanne. So let's see. I think we got one here in the chat. Do we have suggestions for keeping squirrels and deer away?
Dear Lord.
Big dog.
Well,
Big
squirrels,
dog.
squirrels, I've tried just about everything, and
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
have any ideas. Does
yeah.
anybody here?
Besides a gun.
squirrels are difficult because we're creating wonderful habitats for them in our garden. If you're having problems with squirrels at the bird feeders, I think that's every bird feeder dilemma. They usually figure it out sooner or later, and they can jump 10 to 12 feet, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, deer, honestly, if you have a real issue, the only thing that really works is fencing to keep them out of your yard, or keeping some of the more desirable plants up by your house, but I know in Batavia, deer are an issue and they will come right up to your porch and sleep on your deck, so there are some plants that are deer resistant, but there are some plants I like less than other plants. There are some plants that are definitely deer candy, like tulips and lilies and arborvitae. And then hostas, yeah. So that's a really, really tough question, Lori. And sometimes it's something we've got to look at your garden in specific and see if there are ways that we can help, but
People say they put that thin fencing, that light.
yeah, like sometimes fishing line, because deer are, well, they don't have great sight, they're more about smell, so the deer repellents do help. You sometimes have to switch up the repellents because they will get used to something. The point about repellents is to start with them before you actually have a big problem, because once they find a food they like, even a repellent might not help.
Aren't there certain smells that they dislike?
They dislike certain smells like garlic, putrid egg solids. Plant skid is a deer repellent, and that's basically a blood-based repellent that they don't like. Yeah, deer are just tough because there's too many of them. That's the problem. Rita.
I have
Thank you.
a problem. They pruned 4 of our bushes and it's right by our porch. I
Right
mean,
by the
they come
porch.
right up. What is the, we're gonna have to pull them out this year. I mean, it's that bad. What plant would be best there? What
So
bush?
they don't like juniper. They definitely do not like junipers. Off the top of my head,
They don't bother cedar.
but you want a shrub?
Oh,
Yeah, can you email the MG helpline, because we can find a list for you, and there are some native plants, shrubs that they're less likely to nibble on. But I've also found that even ones that say they're deer resistant, they might nibble on it. I've actually, in my yard, started fencing things in the first couple of years to give plants a start. I just take chicken wire and put it around. But this winter, I know, even my mom who lives out in the middle of nowhere, they came right up to her house and they ate
Yes.
every rhododendron leaf they could find.
That's us.
Yeah,
And we're in the country.
yeah.
And I mean, there's plenty of stuff for them to eat other than.
Yeah,
our
once we got that
bushes,
big
but-
snow in January, everything got covered on them and they were hungry,
Yeah.
so, yeah, deer are tough, but email us and we'll send you a list.
I heard something about Irish Spring.
Irish spring
Hanging it
soap,
in your-
yep, hanging it, if you have fruit trees, you can take old pantyhose, onion netting, I take a bar of Irish Spring and I cut it up into quarters. And you can hang that out, deer nose level, and they don't like the smell of Irish Spring soap.
Okay.
So that is it does work, you'd have to keep it, going, but, it is a deterrent.
And hair
it does work.
too. Hair.
Dirty hair, if you can go to, somebody cuts hair, yeah, it's the dirty hair, because they don't like that human smell, and actually, when I worked in a vineyard, that's what we used to put out in the vineyard, was balls of human hair. Yeah, barbershop, yeah. So, yeah, you have to find the right thing and you have to keep changing it up because they will get used to stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, they don't like marigolds. I knew that.
marigolds,
Just
okay.
popped into my, yes, marigolds.
And they generally don't like a lot of the herbs and things because they're the heavier scents,
Mint,
the mints and the lavenders, and so they don't like a lot of
thyme,
herbs.
oregano, sage.
The garlic family. They generally would stay away from plants that have woolly or fuzzy leaves. So it's trial and error.
Anything with berries, I mean, they
Yes, they just ate them.
they just took down my raspberry bushes. too.
Oh,
They
wow.
Right down, they just.
So we've having a problem with deer,
Yeah.
so. Other questions from in person or on Zoom? If anybody on Zoom wants to unmute or put in the chat.
What is this native plant thing? Is that next
It's, what did I say, April 21st?
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks. So I'm doing a program for Earth Day. It's gonna be an hour long, in person or Zoom, register for either or. You know, a lot of people are interested in growing native plants now, so I'm putting a program together for gardeners who are interested in incorporating native plants into their garden. Why should you, how can you, but it's not just gonna be a list of native plants, it's gonna be more of a,
Is it here
it's here
at 12?
at noon, yep, it's gonna be an hour. John,
I've got a gray fungus or a mold on my, the stems of my berry bushes and trees. And I know you want to stay away from chemicals, but what do you recommend there?
so I would wanna see a sample first or a photo, so I can definitely ID what it is. When you say trees, it makes me think of lichen, but when you say berry bushes, not sure. So if they're the same thing on both, like your raspberry canes or what berry bushes? Your
Well, these are like a blueberry.
So blueberry, so even if you could take a photo on your smartphone and bring it in so we can look at it. Or if you wanna clip off a small stem around a twig. If they've been there a while, it sounds like it could be lichen, which you don't have to do
Well, I
anything
didn't know if it
for.
was nutritional too, if my soil went acid or.
Well, blueberries, you want acidic soil,
And you add to it every year.
Wondering.
yeah,
Every spring you have to add more.
the
Fresh,
sulfur depending what your pH is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lichens, we see a lot of lichen on shrubs, on trees, even on rocks. They're actually an indication of relatively clean air. The research has never shown that they've been harmful to the plants. It's more of a thing where they get enough light on the tree. Sometimes we see it in trees that are declining because you've got less leaf canopy and more light coming down to the branches, so the lichen might increase. But definitely get us a picture or bring us a sample in, because I don't wanna give you a recommendation without IDing what your real issue is.
Okay.
All right, Lori, did you have another question?
I just have a comment.
Okay,
The deer have done a job on all my yews and my hostas, and I've removed them all, and what I'm having good luck with is boxwood.
boxwood, yes, that's another one that they don't
Okay.
like, yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
they don't like boxwood.
And I would think they don't like geranium, like the perennial geraniums, because they do have quite the smell.
Thank you for that, Lori, I'd forgotten about boxwood.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yes, citronella one, that's a geranium, type of geranium.
Yeah, that's a perennial, it's not a,
very
it's not a
smelly.
shrub, so I know.
And
Rita's
it
looking
also
for
has that
shrubs.
That's good for a lot
Feel
of
that's
things.
not good.
Yeah, that fuzzy.
All right, are there concerns with boxwoods and moth? Yeah, the boxwood, there's a new invasive species out, the box tree moth, I think it's actually called. Was found in Canada last year, was found in Niagara County. You would wanna, check over your boxwoods before buying them, talk to your supplier, where did they get them from? But that is a new invasive insect we're gonna be on the lookout for. There's always something, so I'm like, if you're worried about every plant, every insect and disease, we wouldn't plant anything, so I'm, be aware when you choose a plant, what it could be bringing in, so. Any other comments, questions? All right, so I thank Suzanne today for her presentation. And I had a little time yesterday, I actually went out and did a little spring cleanup with my native bees and beneficials in mind, so I left stems